Welcome back to Real Pod. This is Max, Victoria's husband. Can already tell you this. Two things about this episode real quick that are already BS. I'm not in the host chair. Vic is in the host chair. I should be in that chair. And this episode's 5 years post-volleyball, but really it should be 6. So
I'm bad at
asterisk
math.
against both those things.
I was counting. And my last season was in 2018, but I graduated college in 2019. So I guess I was like 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. When I do that on my hand, I'm like, oh, it's 5 years. But then it's like...
Good old Vic math. I feel like that comes up literally every single time I'm on the pod of how you can't count. But when you do count that, and it's been 6 years since you were volleyball Vic, what does that feel like?
It's wild. I feel like the idea for this episode came about I just talked to one of the girls who's currently on the USC volleyball team. I was like, damn, it's like been a while. Like that doesn't feel like it was yesterday. It feels like a lifetime ago. I was on campus speaking in my old podcast class, and I was like, I literally said, I remember when Max drove his little scooter through
the
here.
Razor scooter.
Yeah, I'm like, this is where this happened, but it doesn't feel recent. Like it literally feels like a long time ago.
So wanted to reflect on how things have evolved, how her business has evolved, the hidden opponent in her nonprofit, and the impact that volleyball has had on that, which will be fun to dive into. I'm excited to dive into the volleyball side because it just, in this phase of life, we like rarely ever talk about the volleyball, and all the questions you gave me too. A lot of these I've never heard you answer, so it should be fun.
Yeah. So we might go all over the place, but I'm excited. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you, host.
I know for me at the 4-year mark, or I guess 5-year mark, well then now you have not overlapped with any of the players on the current team was trippy. And then I feel like for me, I'm about to get into 8 years removed. 8 years is 2 full graduating classes, like people that weren't even in middle school. That's trippy.
Yeah, and then you become the weirdo where they're like, okay, like you played here a long time ago. Like
the old guy
no one cares.
It's coming back. Way back when you, and I've heard you get asked this question of like, where did it all start from? How did she start her career? How did she get this brand? If you trace everything back, it's the TED Talk when you were a sophomore in 2015. 17. Shows how much I know. That like really sparked it all. Do you ever think what would have happened or how things would have played out if you never had that TED Talk?
Everything comes back to that TED Talk for me. When I think about my career, it really was the catalyst. So I don't know. Like I would not be in this exact place without it. I wouldn't. The TED Talk is titled The Hidden Opponent, which became the name of my nonprofit, The Hidden Opponent. Like there's just so much from it. The virality and the interest is what inspired me to post more online. Like I do think now, especially as I see like Obbs and Wood build their brand and like Natalie jumped on TikTok in 2020. Like I do think I don't see a world where I wouldn't have found my way to an online presence or content creation in some way. But I'm so grateful that it started from that talk because the message of that is so important. And I feel like I'm grateful that it's so much bigger than me because I think, I don't know, I feel like if I didn't have something tied so deeply to purpose and impact and like community, I don't know, I feel like I would maybe feel lost.
Yeah. And I also feel like from my standpoint, it's one of the aspects of your life that even people who know you well I wouldn't say don't realize or don't appreciate because that has a negative connotation, but like it is this huge thing that you have going on in your life that I think a lot of people like aren't wary of.
The hidden opponent?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, like that's kind of wild.
I know.
Like so much of your life is public, but then, oh, by the way, you have this one pillar that's a huge deal. I mean, you're partnering with Adidas. You have campus captains around the entire country that then, you know, people aren't always thinking about it.
I know.
And it's rewarding now, but I'm sure because you said, what, 2017? And like now in 2024, it's much easier to have a mental health conversation and come out with that vulnerability. But you were on like the ground floor of that. What's like a underappreciated challenge or what was something that was more difficult to deal with being on like the ground floor of this movement, being first to this movement that maybe people don't appreciate?
Well, obviously it was born out of my sports career, being a volleyball player at USC. Like the two of those things go hand in hand. I think because it was a part of that first wave, I think it shows it's genuine. And I feel like in this career and industry, people might not always know, is this how someone really feels? Are they really passionate about it? Is it just what everyone's doing? I think obviously we've turned a really great corner in terms of realness and authenticity, and we're seeing less people edit photos and talk more about these things. But I think the something that's nice about just the actual timeline is like, it was not tied to anything bigger than me. Like, it was very much just, hey, I'm taking a hard left in my life right now with no plan or strategy, and like just because I care about it. And so that's something I'm really grateful for, because as much as you don't care what you don't want to care what people think of you and stuff, like I know for a fact you can track back my whole career to that, which is and was very genuine for me. When I like lay my head on the pillow at night, is I'm like, I know all this came from like leaning into what I really cared about.
Totally. And that probably makes it more sustainable long term too, because it's a cause that's close to your heart and not some just like strategic angle that you're using. How does your volleyball blood come through in how you run your business, manage THO, or at least, oversee THO and all the other stuff you got going on?
I feel like I sometimes think about how the person I was when I was an athlete is different than how I am now. I feel like I was the same girl very much, but I think the ways that I like cope with stress now and I deal with challenges, just a lot of the tools and strategies I call on now, I didn't know or have back then. And I sometimes look back and I'm like, oh, like, could I have been better in all these areas, whether it's like literally on the court or just like dealing with my anxiety or with a coach or teammates. Like, I think I would have been able to do it better. But granted, I'm like 27 and I'm so much older and mature. And it's like looking at my 18-year-old self being like, hey, you should have had all these years of wisdom, almost 10 years of wisdom that I feel like I've developed. So sometimes like I think about that when I handle things now, like in what I view as like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm so grateful I have these tools. I wasn't able to have the self-awareness to say, oh my God, I'm jumping from A to Z and I'm completely spiraling and it's causing me to feel anxious and now I'm not playing well and now this is being affected. Like, I didn't have the skills to do that, whereas now I can. And I just wonder how different it would have served me. But I can't play that game, because if I didn't then have the spiraling performance anxiety, I wouldn't have ever given the talk or felt called. Like, I needed to struggle.
And when you say that, hey, you could have handled things differently, when you say that, is it more of a performance thing? Like, I could have played better? Or do you say that of like, man, I wish I could have done X so I would have enjoyed that experience more? Because I feel like they're two different paths.
Yeah. I do feel like a lot of it is I would have played better.
Yeah, which I would answer the question the same way. But I don't think everyone's that way.
I don't know why it's like I can look back on paper and like I was good. But even when I went and I joined Breathe the other day, what?
See, that's what's crazy actually, now that I'm thinking about this, is like you played objectively well. You started for 4 years. I started very minimally in my college career. So hence why, like, if I answer that question, it'd be like, oh, so I could play better. You played well. I feel like from my seat, I wish for you that you could have enjoyed those games, those matches more so, you know?
Totally. I never allowed myself to believe I was a good enough player.
Yeah.
Like, even the other day, I jumped into my friend's club practice. I made a fun little video about it, which I posted on Monday. It's on my page right now. And I like had not played indoor volleyball probably in like 4 years. And the way that I was just like, pass, dig. And I was like literally thinking like, wait, I'm like really good. I'm like, why didn't I let myself like have confidence? Like, because granted, I was in a conference that was one of the best conferences in the country, and I was comparing myself to the literal best liberos in the country. So like, of course, like when I'm comparing myself to girls who right now still play. Like, they still play and they're on the national team and they're so good. And like, I would sit in film rooms and be like, oh my God, I'm just so nowhere near her. But then it's like, what if I go down the list and instead of just comparing myself to these 12 conferences, I look at like actually the scope of teams around the country and the world. Like, I'm actually like, I was constantly looking for validation. So that's something I regret. Like, I wish I just like was, yeah, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Like, I played well. I don't know. I never allowed that for me.
How much of that is because you were a walk-on? Do you think if you got brought on as a scholarship player, you would have had that same mindset?
No, because my freshman year, I believed I was good, and that's how I ended up starting. I was like, I'm good enough to play. I'm better than you. Like, serve me. Like, I had that. It wasn't. I think it was just the pressure and then the self-doubt and then the anxiety where like I very much almost in like the Inside Out or watching Big Mouth with like the little mosquito of anxiety,
Yeah.
like, or the shame monster. I very much just feel like I lost my way mentally.
Totally. I feel like when we talk about volleyball or like reflect on it, a lot of it's like analyzing the negatives. But are there any positives or lessons learned that you take with you from your volleyball chapter into how you're operating your business today?
I would say so many things. I was in a team meeting with the whole team, and actually Nicole Davis came to speak. She was talking about nerves, and she said, I need a volunteer to do this. And I like didn't raise my hand, and she had been working with us like all semester. She was like, another person come do this thing. And I raised my hand like third or fourth. And right when I got up in front of the whole team, she was like, and why didn't you raise your hand to go first?
The one time you didn't raise your hand first.
She had gotten to know me by that point. So she was like, why didn't you go first? And I was like, well, honestly, I didn't want to be annoying because I've kind of been like very eager for all your activities all week. Like, and everyone chuckles, you know, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
And she was like, so in that moment, you weren't actually being true to yourself. It was like a lighthearted thing that she made so deep.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so true. And then actually, if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have raised my hand to volunteer first to then get to ask Kobe Bryant a question from the other class.
Yeah.
So it's all like a ripple effect. But to specifically answer your question.
Totally. And then so from volleyball, you transition, that was what, 2019, 2020, into the working world. I feel like from afar, even as your husband, like that transition from afar seems so smooth. Like I even remember when you were a graduating senior and people like asked you, oh, what are you doing after school? Like any graduating senior gets that question. It was just like, oh, I'm going to speak at colleges and continue to grow my brand. And no one blinked an eye because everyone's like, oh, of course, like Vic will do that thing. So you made the transition look easy. It seemed that way from my seat. But what was hard about that transition that might go underappreciated?
Honestly, I was lucky that I felt like I had a clear path after school because I had started doing public speaking my senior year after the TED Talk. And then I was able to know that I would continue touring, and like I had built up a following on YouTube and Instagram. Like I definitely felt like I had footing and I had that next thing. I think the thing that was most difficult about it was that all that I had waiting for me was so closely tied to me being a USC volleyball player.
Yeah.
It was literally hand in hand. Like I'm speaking because I'm a USC volleyball player sharing my story. People watching my videos because I'm vlogging about my life as a USC volleyball player. It was all so closely tied to my identity as an athlete. And I was actually able to ride the coattails of that for, I think, like 2 years. It wasn't really until 2020 where I felt like I need to evolve in some way because it's just not going to be sustainable. So I feel like I did milk it as long as I could until it was then feeling like not right for me because I knew I wasn't really an athlete anymore. So I think that was the most challenging part, was that I had built something that was related to my identity as an athlete, and that was now leaving me. I actually remember getting so nervous that maybe no one would be interested in me anymore, that I was like maybe going to play a year of beach.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. A fifth year of beach. I remember in your parents' backyard, like hitting volleyballs to you
For
YouTube during
Yeah.
the pandemic when you were like done playing.
Which people still will be like, we loved your pandemic YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm so happy that I made them. But actually that's when I started to talk more about body image and intuitive eating, because I was like, this is unrelated to sport and I know I could speak on it. I feel like, and I was thinking about this the other day, when you're an athlete, you're so open to criticism because that's every day. Every day you go into the gym, it's like, here's all the things you're doing wrong. Here's how you get better. It's just so focused on that. Like, can you think of a practice where you showed up and the whole practice was like, you're doing great, no changes, everything's great, everything's good? No, like every single day was, here's how you can be better. Here's a film that you need to watch about how you could have done better. It's all better. So I feel like I've noticed in a work sense, I almost view work as sport, where like if I'm receive criticism, at least I feel this way, I feel like I'm really good at taking it and I'm open to it because I view this as my craft, and I'm like, we're all just trying to get better and be the best we can be at the craft. So like, give me the criticism. Obviously, like in my own personal life, it's tougher for my ego when like I'm criticized on the way I am with my family or with my friends. Like that's harder to swallow. But when I look at like business, or like you could be better on the call about this, or use a better way for you to deliver feedback, or when you're doing this like work wise, like this branding, let's switch it to this because I think this is a little too whatever. Like I do think I'm really receptive to criticism from sport, and I'm really grateful for that.
Did you have a come to Jesus moment where you're looking yourself in the mirror like, hey, we need to transition? Because from my seat, it felt like it was just a natural evolution. But maybe that's the point of this podcast, is you make those transitions look so easy.
I definitely did. I definitely remember in my room at my parents' old house being like, I can't keep throwing on this USC volleyball practice shirt. Like I had that. Whether it was for me or I think it was for me. Like especially starting a TikTok platform, like I remember struggling to get views in the beginning and then making volleyball videos and getting views and then being like, that's really attractive and that's really sparkly and that seems great, but I can't do that. Maybe I could use some of it to help me establish like my brand or my niche on here. And there's things that I cared about that I wanted to share about that. But I also was like, I've got to start planting new seeds.
What advice would you have for that person that needs to branch out into different pillars?
I would remind them that you have other talents and other things to offer. You might just not know what it is yet, and you might not have taken the time to develop the skill. I think when you're an athlete your whole life, you focus so much on that, and that's what's so celebrated, that you get convinced that it's kind of all that is there. But I feel like I would tell them it is important to discover and take the time to find the other talents, interests, and hobbies that do already live within you and foster them and like take care of them and build them up to be beautiful, sparkly things.
Love that.
Even though it's going to be hard.
Love that. And I feel like a through line for all the pillars that you have created is vulnerability. When you're being that vulnerable, how do you protect your own mental health when you're having to share so much to your followers?
Yeah, during my time at SC, that was really the shift for me. I was always honest, but I wasn't always vulnerable because I did think I kind of had to have it all together, was just sort of like what I presented in high school and middle school. So I think it was the first time I kind of dropped the like outward act and was like, I am insecure in my body. I don't look like this right now. I don't feel like I have tons of friends right now. Like, so that started in college, and obviously people related to it. They felt seen by it. And then that kind of led to the interest in the watching the videos and the speaking at schools, which was great. But then as the years went on, these past 5 to 6 years post-sport, I started to feel like I can't keep kind of talking about this dark time. A lot of my story was like, hey, here's the depression and anxiety and the eating disorder I experienced in college. And I just got to a place where I literally like didn't want to keep talking about it exactly in the way that I had been. Like the TED talk is very vulnerable. And then the talk that I would then go give to schools was equally vulnerable, if not had more stories I'd added to it, just in trying to make it different content. So I got to a place where like I emotionally was unable to keep doing it because it was just really taxing for me. And that's how I had to protect my mental health of like, okay, I can't speak multiple times a month on this. It's just bringing me back. It's making me depressed. I remember being like, before going to speak to, 300 student athletes, I'd be in the hotel room like, okay, close your eyes. Yeah. Remember what it was like to go to a seminar and like you're coming from practice. Like I was literally like out of the depression and happy and enjoying this new career, but then mentally trying to put myself back in this place so I could be a better speaker and I could relate better to the audience. But that was really hard for me. And then also physically, like just the constant travel all around the country by myself, managing it all by myself, like in these tiny hotels where I was maybe scared. Some nights I couldn't sleep because I was like, I don't know where I am. Like, what if I was just afraid? So it was like all of that I realized, okay, I can't keep doing it all myself. I did realize that not before I founded THO. When I founded THO, it was because I wanted to invite other people to do the same as me, like to share their stories, to advocate, to be a part of the change, because I'd seen so many athletes at the places that I was speaking. So that's what inspired me to found THO. I didn't even put this together at the time, but now once I had then started to feel like I can't keep doing this all by myself, I was like, oh, and thank goodness we have THO. We have all these campus captains who are in it right now and they want to talk about it and they're not taxed and they're not feeling like they're wanting to move through it. So that's been a beautiful thing about the nonprofit is like the mission and the story and the change I wanted to create by sharing my story is happening every day through other people at the Hidden Opponent. And that's amazing because I don't know if I could picture a world where like I've completely moved on from the student athlete mental health crisis. Like I just can't. Like just because I'm out of it doesn't mean I want to be like, well, see ya. Like hope it's better for you guys. Like no, like I know it's still not. So that's something I'm really grateful for in hindsight because as I've had to kind of do less speaking engagements, change my business model a little bit to protect my mental health, I'm so glad that the Hidden Opponent is able to keep doing that with all the amazing people who work there, the campus captains that we every year have new campus captains and they graduate. Like it's great. And I didn't even think about it when I started it.
Did you come up with the idea for campus captains?
I did, yeah.
Because that's one thing that like I don't think you get enough credit for. Is there anything that it's in your business right now that you think would be like the next pillar to shed or adjust or evolve into?
It's a good question. I feel like as I look back, everything naturally has like worked hand in hand, like, and it's come back around like to kind of mold together. I think that's the beauty of like building something that feels like it all comes from the same like nucleus with the same meaning. And I think at the end of the day, like everything I want to do is about empowering people to like love themselves and be okay with wherever they are. I think that's like the through line of Real Pod and the Hidden Opponent and Real Post and everything. So I don't know. I don't think too much about it in a negative or stressed way because I just feel like it's all going to be related.
I think I know the answer to this, and people are gonna go be like, "Oh, but the Vic mom content, whenever that comes, is gonna crush." Like that's the next evolution.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to the sports side of things, is there anything that you had like? Are there any struggles that you had as a volleyball player that you're still working through that are still in the back of your mind or front of your mind at this stage of your life?
I still think I struggle with the question of, am I good enough? Was I good enough? Like, I don't know. When for example, I referenced.
At volleyball?
Yeah.
Why do you need that answer?
I don't know. But even when I went to go join my friend's practice, I'm like, the girls that I played against who are here, like, are they like, oh, I remember her, she was really good? Or are they like, oh yeah, I remember her, like she was fine? Like, I don't know. Like that's still like, I still think about that.
But that's funny because inevitably as your content platform grows, less and less people will know you as Volleyball Vic.
And I feel like that already happened. Actually, the episode I did on I'm having an identity crisis a few years ago, it was a solo episode, was really a time in my life where I was like, wow, I feel like I'm really shedding this like athlete layer and I'm doing something different and that's okay. So I think I'm grateful to have learned that lesson so that now when I want to do like so much to say with Aubrey, like I'm like, I want to do it just because I want to do it.
Yeah.
For no other reason.
When was that solo episode?
I think it was like over 2 years ago. It's called I'm Having an Identity Crisis or something. And I cry on it, of course. And I talk about like not being the volleyball player and not posting as much eating disorder content and worrying what people would think.
How have you changed over those 2 years since that episode to now in terms of like your relationship and how you view volleyball and the impact that it's had on you?
Yeah. I mean, of course, sometimes I think about like, you know, on the one hand, I'm founder and chair of this nonprofit that has a really important mission. And then I'm also like, I'm at the Wicked premiere and I'm like posting a comedy video with Natalie. And I'm like, is this weird? Like if so-and-so's agent looks up, who's this founder that reached out about this collaboration? And like, I don't know, it doesn't all fit. But I try to remind myself whenever my mind wants to put me in a box, like can't be put in a box. Like, and I like to think about other people who I view as super dynamic and have other things going on. Like that it's just my mind wanting to cling to what makes quote sense or what is all the same color. And it's okay if I'm not that. It's really difficult for me, but I'm just like, I'm also a person. Like any person is excited about a movie they love or an outfit. I've learned that through some of my podcast guests too. Like you can be a founder and want to be a podcast host, and you can be a role model and want to be sexy and show cleavage, and you can be, I think it's that. I try to remember all that. The and.
Love that. What's something you've learned about yourself in these 5 years, 6 years since you left volleyball that was not uncovered during your athletic chapter? Because I feel like so often when it's the same thing with me, like when the conversation comes up, you focus so much on just like how formidable the athlete years were in terms of like defining your personality, but we're always evolving. So what have you learned about yourself these past 5-6 years?
You know what I've learned about myself is that I don't always need to have a sense of urgency. I think that's something I think about. I'm like, what's the biggest difference between me as an athlete versus me now? And of course, this is like where I default is like sense of urgency. Everything's got to get done. Everything's got to be great. But I know that it doesn't also. And I'm working to get more into that place of like, not viewing everything as like urgent. And I think all throughout sports, we were wired to say like sense of urgency. So,
it's such a fine line though. Cause like when you look at your career, if you hadn't have done that TED Talk in 2017 and said, oh, I can get to it in 2019, that topic changes completely. I remember the days of, and I always reference this, like you making 4 TikToks a day during the 2020 pandemic, like you didn't have to do that. You could have made 2, and like, who knows where your business would have been.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it served me well, and now I'm like tired, and I'm like, okay, not everything has to be urgent, and I'm happy with where I'm at.
That's amazing.
Which is a nice thing. But yeah. What else have I learned? Do you have anything about me?
You learned that you settled with your husband for sure.
No.
I mean, we said this last time I was on the podcast, but that ego, Eckhart Tolle learnings, I feel like has been a total transformation for you the past year or two.
Totally. I feel like that would have served me really well.
Which that's not a volleyball lesson per se.
I do think the teachings of that I did learn about in The Inner Game of Tennis, that book. Great book. Sasha just let out an audible gasp.
Yeah.
Such a good book, right?
I also feel
I think that has Eckhart teachings in it.
Love that. I also feel like you like seek out those teachings and are more receptive to those teachings relative to your peers because of your volleyball chapter. And I feel like I think we're similar in this of like, we wanted help and information so much during that phase that then now in the next phase of life, you especially more like receptive to that self-growth, improvement, coaching mentality. When you were coming out of volleyball, entering the working world, and you like envisioned your like 5-year trajectory, now you're at the end of that. Looking back, is there anything that surprised you about this chapter of your life and your business?
No, a lot of what I feel like I'm up to now is closely tied to what I was starting my senior year. But I think what maybe would surprise me is how long it takes to do certain things. Whether it's like booking a certain podcast guest or getting a certain opportunity in the working world, like it does take time. And I feel like this year I've had a lot of where like the seed I planted in 2020 blossomed in 2024. So I think that's something I realize is, although I wanted all of maybe what I am experiencing now to have been a thing 4 years ago, 3 years ago, like things take time. And even in my now, I still feel like there's 5 more years of stuff I want to be doing or have accomplished or worked on. So I think what would surprise me is that like it does take a long time, because I would have been like, oh, no. Like for people, yeah, but not for me. Like I'll make it happen tomorrow. I can get what adults mean when they used to say like, it's not going to be an overnight thing or it's going to happen. Like it takes time. Like I think I now see myself as that like person who gets what they mean.
I feel like that's very evident with Real Pod. Every Wednesday showing up and then like slowly but surely growing the thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, like just changing my, my goals in a sense. Like I think I used to be really growth driven, and now I'm just not kind of focused on that. And when I hear the voice chime in about like, oh, like you need to do more of this or you need more of that, like it gets back into the rat race. And I'm like, no, like I don't. Like I take a deep breath, I look around, and I'm like, wait, I actually love where I am and I don't want that.
I definitely feel that shift now that you say that. Was there a moment that you looking back, you're like, ooh, that's where my mindset shift, or getting out of like go, push, progress, to then, no, let me settle in my life. And sometimes settle in has like a negative connotation, but
I think it's probably a mix of getting to a point in my career where I was able to have the luxury to say a lot of no's. I think when you make the shift from like everything is a yes because you want to take every opportunity, you don't know where it can lead. Like, I think when you slowly get to a point where you don't need to take every opportunity and you can start saying more no's, that's empowering. But I also think too, like having good people around me who I work with, like Jenna, my brand director, has always been a voice of like, we don't necessarily want more followers. Like, we want a really engaged, great community who we feel like we are like, and we do a beach cleanup and we like to hang out with them. Like,
totally.
we want great people, not a lot of people. Like, and you know, I think in this business, people are always like, send us your numbers, your stats, your this. And it's like, someone could have 3 million followers and that could maybe be more impressive to someone who looks at both profiles at a first glance. But then, like, if you go check out the VIPs and you go look at, like, the selling out the BBT and you look at THO, like, it's so much more important, like, the actual relationships in the community and not actually growth. So I think I needed that in the beginning to build what is here. But I don't, fortunately, I'm not like, I want to just keep climbing up because that's where everyone says you're supposed to head.
Love that. And the topic that every athlete can relate to, regardless of sport, is when you're playing, all your workout regimen is planned out. It's down to every last detail. And then with the flip of a switch, it is off and you have to do your own stuff. And I know you've talked about this in other podcasts and other platforms. Like, what jumps out about that transition, going from, hey, every workout's planned, to then having to find your own rhythm, giving yourself grace? I'll never train as hard as when I was playing football, or at least not with that, with how intentional that was for a specific goal. Maybe I'll go through some post-athlete running phase like some people do. But I guess just how did you navigate that transition looking back?
My mindset and approach to it has definitely evolved throughout the years. And I do have like breadcrumbs throughout all my content. So if someone was really curious, I feel like I did document this evolution. Like from the beginning when I was like, I'm not working out for like 3 months. Like, nope, not going to walk with my mom. I'm not sweating. Like, I don't want to move my body. Like,
I remember that.
That was my mindset post-sports, which I think was alarming to everyone in my life. They're like, this is not healthy. This is not good. And I was just like, it's not forever. It's just right now, I don't want to move my body, period. Like, I didn't want to work out. And I talked about that. And then I was like, okay, I want to get back into working out. And then I had to accept the fact that it's not realistic to work out for 3 hours a day. I can't compare my workouts to what I used to do in college when I had like this gym and this training plan and I had literally 3 hours. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. So I have to start viewing a walk as a workout, and, you know, a workout class that I used to scoff at, like a yoga class. Like, come on, I'm a D1 athlete. That is a workout. Like, I had to adjust the way I thought about it and I judged it. And then I had to figure out how to put it into my own schedule and be accountable to do it and what was going to work for me. And, you know, I feel like it's gone up and down and ebbed and flowed. And then I had to get to a point where I decided I'm no longer working out to be skinny. Okay. And I'm not going to work out to win a game or win a position because I'm not an athlete anymore. So why am I working out? That was a question that I actually had to ask myself and deeply think about, because I knew I wanted physical activity to be part of my life. But these two reasons of like, for your body image or for sport no longer related to my life. And I ended up realizing I'm going to work out just because I can, because I have this body that moves, and because I want to show gratitude for that and for life. And because one day I might not be able to work out. I look at my sweet Yaya and I'm like, she would love to walk around the mall with me. She can't even walk. Like, it's harder for her to go up and down the stairs. And I know that if I'm grateful enough to live that old, that will be me one day. And I'll think, I would kill to do one more workout. I would kill to go to a workout class for the beauty of working out, because I love the way it makes me feel, because I love that I feel confident and on top of my day, because it's good for me. Like, all these really like pure reasons keep me working out now. And for November, I'm giving myself the challenge of doing 3 a week. So 3 high intensity workouts a week. I'm not counting walks. I've done that before, but I knew I wanted to dial up kind of my fitness routine right now and feel more like just in shape. So I've been doing 3 high intensity workouts every week of November, and I've made it so far. I think everyone has to go on that journey themselves, and you have to figure out why you're going to get up and move your body. It's difficult. One thing though, you might regret not going to work out, but you will never regret the feeling you feel after the workout. I feel like I think about that all the time. Like the other day, I did not want to go. But when we were done, I was like, I feel amazing.
Vic asked me twice in bed, are we not going? The first time I was like, no, we're going. And then like I rolled over, did the whole alarm snooze thing. 90 seconds later, are we still going? I was like, yeah, we're going.
I was just waiting. I was just waiting for you to say, yeah, let's skip it. And you'd be like, yay.